Hello, everyone. My name is Cassandra, and I'm on the College Greenlight team. Thanks for joining us for day 2 of the Online College Block Party, a webinar series that celebrates first-gen college and underrepresented students on their journey to and through college. We're live today with Northwestern, Colby College, and Colorado College. Today, we're thrilled to conclude our 2-part series featuring 3 dynamic workshops. Starting with Northwestern University, hear from a current Northwestern student and an admission director about their insight and transition to college or universities. Next, Colby College will talk about the personal statement, how to get started, and understand its role in the application review process in the age of COVID-19. And finally, Colorado College will address some of the biggest rumors we hear when applying to college. Before we get started, here are some tips to get the most out of the College Block Party. Make sure you use the chat feature to the right and chat with others in the room. And as you've seen, feel free to introduce yourself and make some friends. If you have a question, use the Ask a Question tool below. So there's no right or wrong questions, but try to avoid any specific questions about your GPA, your test scores, or admissions chances, because colleges can't provide you with the best answer without seeing your entire application. If you're curious about your admissions chances, visit capex.com/greenlight-student and explore over 3,000 college profiles and learn more from our CapEx insights. If you're joining us live, be sure to join the conversation on Twitter at #OnlineCollegeBlockParty. Now that we're ready to go, let's kick things off with Northwestern. Let's welcome Paul Compton, Senior Assistant Director of Admission, and current Northwestern student Patrick Cott to the stage.
Oh, Paul, I think you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now? Great.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Paul Compton, Senior Assistant Director. Happy to be here with you today. And like Sandra said, I'm presenting with Patrick. This is great. I only have one brother, and my brother's name is Patrick. So this whole time is going to be just like Paul and Patrick back at my house, but I'm here in the digital space with Patrick and with all of you. So today I want to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available at Northwestern, and specifically some of the resources that are available to help you as you're transitioning to college, whether that is at Northwestern or whether that's somewhere else. I'm going to be giving a lot of information, and Patrick's going to be able to talk a little bit more about specific events and organizations that are available at Northwestern. A little bit about me. I'm a first-generation college student. I was a Spanish and sociology major. Grew up in Southern California, and I was the first to go to college and the first to go out of state for college. And here's Patrick's information. He is a art, radio, television, film major, as well as economics. And where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up in Mount Prospect, Illinois, so just a northwestern suburb of Chicago. So really the move to Northwestern was very short, about only a 30-minute drive. So not too big of a change.
Perfect. Before we start anything specifically about Northwestern, what I want to just say is that this context of where we all are is very unique. We're all in a place that we never have been before. And I just wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of unknown in the path that's ahead of you as you're looking towards college, as you're looking just towards what the next day will look like. So I just wanted to say a quote and I will say also that quarantine has made me probably a little bit more emotional and heartfelt. So I have 2 different quotes that I'm going to be sharing with you. The first one is one that I've clung to all of quarantine. And it says that life shrinks or expands in proportions to one's courage. And I think of courage as what you do in the face of unknown. We oftentimes talk about Northwestern students as being good at being able to be in a place of uncertainty and still being able to kind of move their way forward. But regardless of where you're at in your situation, you're here and you're pursuing your educational goals. So I just wanted to start off our presentation by saying to recognize that and to celebrate that for you. So we have our first polling question. Since we're talking about the transition to college, I wanted to know if we can do the first poll and see how you learned about a school, whether that was by attending a fair, a tour, an interview, a campus visit or by even talking to a graduate. And it looks like we've got a lot of people that have gone to a college fair, and that was the same for me as well. My first any interaction with college was when my parents told me to go to a college fair, and they stood behind me and they pushed me through the door and they said, all right, go ask some questions. And then the second thing they told me was, all right, go pick a major that's going to make us the most money. And they said us, like, you're going to help the family make this money. So as I told you before, I was a Spanish and sociology major, so I don't think I followed the second part of their desires very well, but I had a great time in that. The second polling question that we have is, as you're thinking about going to college, what areas do you think you would see yourself being involved in? And looks like we had a lot of people that were interested in multicultural affiliation groups. There's gender and sexuality resource groups. Maybe you want to be a part of a religious organization. I know at Northwestern and many other places, there's groups for first generation and or lower income groups. We have one called Quest Plus, which is great at Northwestern. So yeah, great to just see how people are voting and see things you might be interested in. It's always nice to think about college, not just as what you're going to be doing with your major, but really all those other things that really help you get connected to the community that's available at a college and at a university, as you're going to be meeting new people and being able to interact with people from all over. So you might be asking yourself some questions like, as I'm going to college, will there be other people that are like me? What questions should I ask? And also to think about just how you might be growing and how you might change. When I first went into college, I was going to be a biology major, and then I took a chemistry class, and I ended up being a sociology major, and you didn't have to take any more chemistry classes, and that's fine. College is a time for you to be able to explore things, to figure stuff out about yourself. Maybe you have a whole new passion. Maybe there's something you want to study that you didn't even know the academic discipline existed until you get to college. So it's always important as you're in this place to be thinking about what that might look like as you go to that. So one of the most helpful things, and this is kind of across all schools, this is not just for Northwestern, but our orientation program. So these are kind of like your introduction. Typically it's before you come to campus where students are able, or before classes start, where students are on campus and you get to know all the different acronyms. One thing that higher education has in common across all schools is that there's always acronyms for everything. There's nicknames, there's the official name, and then there's the real name for all the campus buildings. So even though orientation programs are supposed to get you connected to people and the resources that are there, it's also helpful to just kind of know your way around the different resources that are there and just what people refer to things as. So at Northwestern, we have something called Wildcat Welcome. This year, it did look a little bit different, but I'm going to pass it over to Patrick to talk a little bit about his experience with Wildcat Welcome and what some of the orientation to Northwestern looked like and kind of what that transition was.
Definitely. So yeah, Wildcat Welcome is basically is Northwestern's orientation program, but it's a little bit different in the fact that most schools typically do a weekend orientation program somewhere from Friday until Sunday where all students are moving in. But for us, it's about 7 days. And it's 7 days where you're assigned a group. It's about, say, like 10 to 12 people who are more than likely going to be in the same major as you. But you kind of spend that week just getting to know those people while also getting to know everybody else on campus. And you're also assigned a peer advisor at the same time. So that's just an upperclassman, sophomore through senior, who is just going to lead you through registering for classes, just kind of getting to know the campus, understanding kind of just little tiny hidden gems like Norris University Center where we have a Starbucks in there. It's those types of things that the peer advisor is just going to take you through. So it kind of, we're able to ease that transition into college a little bit more. Also in terms of other pre-orientation programs, we also have programs where you travel to Chicago with a group of people even before Wildcat Welcome, where you just kind of get to explore the city, which is only a few miles away, which is also an incredible experience. I've gone to it so many times just to find hidden gems in terms of food. Just lately, there was Beacon Donuts, which is like this hidden sort of donut shop in the middle of an alley. Crazy stuff. Very, very good. So yeah, in terms of Wildcat Welcome, it is an orientation program, but just a little bit more intense in a sense that you really do get to know Northwestern as much as you can in those 7 days.
Awesome. Yeah, and the character of each of these programs looks really different. But I think what Patrick was talking about that's really important is that you do have that longer period of time, and it is just that community of people that are either your peer advisors or people that are there trying to figure it out with you. So there's never going to feel you're never going to have this sense of like, oh, everyone else already they have everything figured out. You're all kind of in the same boat together. So that's kind of the welcome to it. There is a video on our YouTube page if you'd like to see what Wildcat Welcome looks like from the ground. This is not what Wildcat Welcome March to the Arch looked like this year, as it was not looking like this due to you see no one wearing a mask or anything like that. But it's a really cool video shot from a drone. So I would recommend you all take a look at that. But I think as we've talked about in the second polling question, when you're going to a college or a university, you're going to have, if you're living on campus, you'll have your residential hall and you'll have your place where you're staying. You'll have the classrooms, but also there's so many other ways for students to get connected. And I think one of the things that I appreciate the most about college, whether it's a small college, a big college, a private college, a public college, is that each of us have so many different parts to our identities. You might look at me, and I told you I was a first generation student. You'd recognize I'm male, or you'd assume I'm male. There's so many different parts of our identity that we have. And I think one of the things that I really enjoy is that on a college campus is that oftentimes there are offices, programs, and events that really help you to form that identity or maybe to explore new parts of yourself. Maybe you've been really tied to your racial identity, but haven't really necessarily explored your religious identity or your cultural identity in different ways. And there's many different spaces on campus. The screen shows a couple of those different ones at Northwestern, and it's really great, I think, especially when you have such a diverse college or a university like Northwestern, to have these places that can really speak to individual parts of our identity. We're all multifaceted, but then to also enter into those spaces and to feel known, at least in that part of your identity. And then from there to be able to make those connections to other parts of campus. So Patrick, are there any of these spaces that you've interacted with?
Yeah, so actually specifically the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, I identify as, part of the LGBTQ community. And for me, it was definitely something that was more, I'd say, a bit of a difficult transition going into college. So for that resource center to be there and for it to just be a safe space, just discuss kind of life in general and how you, I guess, are handling your gender and your sexuality. And during a really intense period of growth, especially in college, was a resource that was really helpful for me. And I know for many of my other friends and students across campus as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think also when we're talking about the transition, and I think this is particularly true this year, is that your mental health and your physical well-being are super, super important as you're going through everything. There may be counseling services that are available, but also just thinking about what are ways that you can, and this might be more important this year, just as we're all sitting inside and we're probably more isolated than we normally are. What are those ways that you can stretch yourself to be either physically more active or mentally active, and to check in with people to kind of see what those things that people are struggling with, and also to get connected with resources that are available. So at Northwestern, we have something called Counseling and Psychological Services, where you can talk with someone about difficulties that you're going through and kind of have that counseling session on campus, but also things like athletics and intramurals and being close to a lake or maybe going for a run. And the food that you eat, all of that is super important too as part of your physical well-being and just like your mental state of mind. I know Patrick had talked about donuts and going to find Beacon Donuts, which are so, so good. But there's also something just to be said about like what that can do to kind of break up a routine and to go find that place in a college town like Evanston, where Northwestern is located. There are many different restaurants, and I could talk about the food in Evanston and Chicago for the rest of this hour and the next one. But just to recognize that opportunity to break out of your own kind of cycle and to be able to connect with others over food is also a really important way that colleges and universities can help support you in your mental and physical well-being. Also, one of the things that most people love to talk about, especially college students, is all the free stuff that happens. It's free once you're at Northwestern. It's free when you're at your college or your university. One of the things I like to talk about and emphasize is our intercampus shuttle that goes from our undergraduate campus in Evanston to the downtown campus in Chicago. And it's free for Northwestern students, and it's free for faculty and staff as well. So if you really want to go find those donuts, or if you're not from the Chicagoland area and you want to try deep dish pizza, or you've heard about some of the great tacos that are on the southwest side of the city, you have an opportunity to be able to go into Chicago for free and just to be able to transfer to that downtown campus, but also to think about things like, even though the transportation is free, what sorts of opportunities does that open up for students? So as you're thinking about the transition, maybe you have like a favorite shop at your hometown that you're really connected to and you might feel sad leaving. There might be a shop that you might find in the city of Chicago or in the city of Evanston that can kind of help to replicate that. I know coming to the Chicagoland area, I missed going to the beach. And even though Lake Michigan isn't quite like the Pacific Ocean, it was nice just to be alongside a body of water and to kind of feel like I was back at home. So that's one thing that's free. There's plenty of other things that are free. Patrick, have you gone to any of the home games or to any events where you've gotten free food? I feel like free food is everywhere at Northwestern.
Absolutely. Well, actually, even like for a lot of the home games, I know that they also give out so many free t-shirts. Like that's another thing about Northwestern is t-shirts galore. I promise you, like you will not even need your own closet. And even like during Wildcat Welcome, in your first week, they throw t-shirts at you left and right. So it's kind of just, yeah, you do get so many free experiences, and especially with home games, so many giveaways. So it's definitely, you're not going to be missing out at all.
And then another space, we had talked about support for mental and physical well-being. We had talked about free things that are available. I think it's also one of the things I like to highlight at Northwestern, and partially this is because of the students that I work with, but there's an office there called Student Enrichment Services, which is directly for the support of first generation and or lower income or undocumented or DACA students on our campus. So it gives students a way to not only have community, but also a way to kind of connect with some of those resources. And they have everything from like funds that are available to help you get a winter coat. If you are not used to having to wear a winter coat, that could be helpful. There's laptop programs where you can check out a laptop and use it kind of on behalf of the university. There's also a way for you to be able to sign up for a lot of different activities all through one form rather than having to like reapply to all these different activities. It's a way for students to feel connected, to get connected, and to make sure that those experiences that we've talked about of like doing fun activities in Chicago or doing fun activities on campus, that those are truly available for the whole population of students that are there. I don't know, Patrick, you said, are you a Questbridge student? Is that right?
Yeah, so I applied. I didn't actually do the match, but I did, was a finalist for Questbridge. Such a great program. And also in terms of just the Quest Scholars Network at Northwestern, I think we are actually still the biggest program in the country, which is pretty crazy. And whether it's from ice cream socials or like professional events, I know that Google recruiters came here to Northwestern one time and did a specific event just for Questbridge scholars. It's a great way to just find a community on campus. And for people who I have just kind of experienced similar things to, I was also a first generation student. So to just come here and just have somebody who kind of understood that, college was a little bit crazier for me, especially at the beginning, was just a great network to have from the start.
Can you talk about any of those as you're thinking about, you found community in a lot of different places? Can you talk about any of those stories that you had in the transition to college? Like any memories that stick out of like, wow, this is definitely those first memories of this is what it felt like to actually be a college student, and kind of what that looks like now from where you are almost near the end of your time to the beginning of your time?
Definitely. So I was in a similar spot at the beginning of my college career, and I came in as a biomedical engineering student on the pre-med track. And I was like, same thing, chemistry kind of hit me hard, and I was like, this might not be it. This might not be it for me. So I think a place that I really looked for in terms of community was, I always loved film and television. And within, I'd say about like just a quarter, I was on my first film set here at Northwestern. And that's just kind of like where I found my community of just people who had the same interests and same passion. And, on film sets, you really get to bond with people because you're there for, say, like 12 hours a day, all working on the same project. And sure, it can be a little bit hectic and you're kind of starved for food at certain points because you're just like living off food donations. But I found so many of my great friends there to this day. And now we're making our own movies together. And it's kind of things like that. So just through especially like extracurriculars on campus, which are such a big thing, you are going to find just people who have common interests, but also who just want to like chat with you and, hang out with you afterwards. So, yeah, that's definitely kind of like where I found, I think, my first transition into finding my community here. Definitely wasn't in the BME. It wasn't in BME, but it was later on for sure.
And I think that's a great lesson to speak on, is that even though so much of the college process can be about which school are you applying to and which major are you applying to, is that all these other things that we've been talking about the community, about the space, about the academic programs, even the academic programs that we both thought we were going to go into medicine and do that, and sociology and radio and television film look a little bit different than that. But to know that there's places, even if the kind of path ahead of you looks unknown, that there are still so many places for you to be able to connect with other people. So I think that that's a great way to be able to frame some of that.
Definitely.
And then also, once you're there, you have the transition. Maybe you're a month in, and there, you have some friends, the buildings, you're used to it. What are some of those things that are available at a school beyond just the financial aid to help pay for room and board and tuition, which is an amazing part? But it's always good to kind of ask those questions about what resources are available to really help students thrive there. And at Northwestern, we have a couple different examples. There's 3 on the screen, but Patrick, I don't know if you can talk to a little bit about what are some of those, maybe it's people, maybe it's organizations or these programs that have kind of helped you to not only just adjust, but also to really take advantage of the full experience at Northwestern.
Definitely. I think it's especially to that loan-free financial aid packages, especially as a first-generation student, that price tag, it looks a little bit crazy. I even told my parents the amount of times I had to tell them, like, it's 100% like they're need blind. It's going to be okay. Like, I promise everything will be fine. I think the financial aid offices, it's great in the fact that they are able to take you step by step as to just how financial aid is going to work and how much you should be expecting to pay for school. That's something, I visited that office so many times in my time here, and they have always been so helpful in just explaining things to me that my parents don't understand, but then now I do. So, and in terms of just also one of those programs, a summer internship grant program, so many of my friends and myself have been able to take advantage of it. And basically the program is just, you apply for it and just specify what type of internship you're going for or what type of internship you've already landed for the summer. And Northwestern is just able to provide you with some funds just to make sure that you are choosing internships that fit your interests, because a lot of internships out there are still unpaid. But that you're also just able, not afraid to be able to afford just living somewhere while also paying for food, things like that. So that program has really come in handy for myself while I've been here, but also for so many of my friends as well.
I think like the opportunity to maybe, if you need to go to a different city, like a lot of people dream of going to New York City, like it's not necessarily known as like the cheapest place to be. So having those funds from the university to help support that and make those dreams possible is really fantastic. So that's always one of my stories that I love hearing students talk about their experiences, just like how they've been able to use that. And rather than having to think about like, okay, am I going to do this internship and just try and find a way to put money together, or am I going to work and say no to that internship? But really making a way where you can do those things that are helping you to achieve your goals, but also what can the university do, and really practical financial resources to help you meet those goals is always a really cool thing. So I love thinking about those opportunities beyond just financial aid, but also what can you do to really ensure that students are there. Before we go to that last part, I also want to talk about, there's things like research opportunities and study abroad as well. For Northwestern, one of our cool things about our study abroad program is that we have over 120 different programs for students to be able to participate in. And if you go through one of those pre-approved programs, all of your financial aid is able to go with you. So the financial aid that you'd be receiving in Evanston would also cover financial aid that you would be needing somewhere else. As well, those classes are guaranteed to transfer back. So it makes it really easy where you're able to take advantage of some of those opportunities without having to think like, okay, I'm going to have to pay extra for this, or I'm going to have to do this and maybe spend an extra quarter on campus in order to graduate to still do those experiences. And I think the resources that Northwestern has to really open those experiences up to a lot of people and to make sure that those experiences and activities are available for all of the students is something that's quite important and really does help a lot of students to not only adjust, but to also take advantage of those experiences in a way that helps them to thrive. So I did mention that I was going to have 2 quotes, as I told you that quarantine is getting me in my feelings recently. So I think there's a few things to keep in mind as you're thinking about the transition to college. We'll do this, and then we'll have some time for question and answers too. But ask questions. People love to be able to tell their stories. One of my favorite parts of my job is being able to present with students like Patrick, where we get to hear just what their experiences are, hear the different things that have brought them to the place where they're at, and just getting to hear there's so many different ways that people go about how they live their life, and you get to learn from people just through their stories. But people really do like to talk about themselves, and just to kind of share that with people. So keep in mind, everyone starts somewhere. If this is your first step in the college process and you are here and kind of hearing some new information, or maybe you're connecting with people or hearing about new colleges, that's great. You start from somewhere and you take the next step and the next step. And then I think kind of tying together all of the past slides that we've had is that it's both academics and the community that really do make a college experience. While there are many classes that you might remember in 20 years or you might remember in 10 years, it's also those people and the places and those experiences that not only helped enrich your college community, but also help challenge you and develop you into the person that you are. I know for me, some of the friendships that I've made within my first 2 days at college are still some of the most profound relationships that I have. And those people were studying completely different things. So I told you I was coming in as bio. This person was an art history major, and I had another friend who was interested in religion. So there's a lot of different things that just because you're not necessarily sharing a major, there's so many other ways to connect with people. And this has been a quote for me that I've really enjoyed. It's on the right hand of the screen there, kind of thinking about, especially for this upcoming year. Northwestern just started classes yesterday, so we're fresh in a new year. But I think when there's so much unknown, it can be this has been a really nice quote for me. So it just says, "It's a terrifying thing to begin anything at all. The rewards are but rumors then, and the glories are but gossip. But to taste and to see, we must venture into the murky waters of inexperience. And that indeed is a terrifying thing, but is more terrifying still to stand ashore and to wish that someday it could actually be true." So with that, I want you just to, like I said before, embrace the courage of where you're at, that you're doing all of this work towards your goals. Don't discredit it. Take advantage of these opportunities and these resources. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming to that. There's a few email addresses on the screen right now. If you have questions, Clave is our Latinx student-facing group in the admissions office. Ambassadors is our Black and African-American facing group. QuestBridge is the QuestBridge email. My email is also there. And then if you'd like, you can click on the link to do one of our virtual tours. So there's many different ways to kind of get connected to that. All right, so let's answer some questions. Looks like we have quite a bit of questions, actually. Let me stop sharing my screen. All right. So there's a question about what type of students Northwestern is looking for. And I was having a conversation about this earlier with a colleague and with a college counselor, and that it's really, I don't know, Patrick, if you would agree with this statement, but it feels like it's a really hard question to answer of what type of student a Northwestern student could be, because you have everything from, you have people that are into film, you have people that are wanting to be medical doctors, you have the D1 athletes, you have the theater people, you have people from all over. So while there's not necessarily like one specific type, I would say, that dominates it, I think one of the qualities that I see most often in Northwestern students are people that are open to learning and open to kind of like challenging their ideas of like, oh, I can explore something new with this, or I can try something new. Maybe you've never been a part of an a cappella group and you come to Northwestern and that's something that you do. So I think that openness to creativity is something that's a pretty unique factor among people. Any other kind of qualities that you would see in other people?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is that it's either you have something that you're passionate about, or you're driven to find something that you maybe haven't found before. And I think that was especially something that I can relate to, because I genuinely came into school and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And as we saw, within 3 months, I completely changed my mind. So I think it's, as long as you are continuously just trying to find, like, what makes you get up in the morning, what makes you happy, I think that's the most important thing. And then just try to make that come across in your application. And then, you have the chance to do that within the essays, and just like, what prior experiences have you had in your life. So just, yeah, try to focus in on that. Like, what are you really passionate about yet, or what are you trying to maybe find later on that might get you there?
Yeah, totally. Another question we have is about how you can stand out in the application process. I wanted to talk about that there's no one specific type of Northwestern student first, because I think oftentimes there might be an assumption that you have to have a certain academic, like you have to only be taking IB classes, you have to only be doing these things, and that there are many different ways to stand out in the application process. We talked about the qualities that we're looking for in students, but also I think what helps us as speaking as an admission director, one of the things that's most helpful is when we get to connect with students and hear from their essay, or to hear from a recommendation letter about getting to know who you are and how you might contribute. So having test scores, if you have them, and having your transcript and all of that information is really helpful. But at the same time, we're not just admitting people into a classroom, we're admitting people into being part of a whole community. So when we're looking at people's applications, we certainly are looking at academics, but at the same time, we're looking for people that are excited to be part of the college community, but also are interested in being part of the classroom and the whole experience at Northwestern. So I think, especially this upcoming year, for any of the seniors that are there, many of the colleges and universities are test optional this year. So I think that I would say that there's a very high likelihood that there's going to be a lot of emphasis placed on those activities, the essays, and the recommendation letters, just to get to know students more. If we have less information about a student, it's often those pieces of information that we do have can really help to make sense of who you are and how you might fit in at our particular school. So in terms of like the specific application requirements for Northwestern, we are test optional this year. You would submit your transcript. We don't have a specific GPA that students need to get. We don't have a specific, if you do submit a test score, we don't have a specific test score that you have to get in order to be evaluated as part of the application process. We do ask for 2 recommendation letters and then 2 essays, as well as all the different activities and leadership awards that you might have won. So I think those activities are really a nice way to also stand out, where if you have an activity at your high school that maybe you have an acronym for it that no one outside of your high school would know what that is, you want to make sure that you explain it in a way that really makes your contribution to the school and the community stand out well. Petra, do you remember if you put any like activity that wasn't academic, or any like activity that you thought about that was like a funny activity on your application? That's one of the things that it's like.
Funny enough, I think my entire Common App essay. So I used to be a ballroom dancer for about 8 years, which is crazy. And
Wow.
it started off in 3rd grade, and I continued on for a pretty long time. But that was like the one topic I decided to talk about in my Common App essay. And yeah, I mean, I think it works, because I ended up going pretty well. But yeah, in terms of like non-academic clubs and stuff like that, I don't think that I was in student government, things like that. But the one thing I just kind of did on the side was ballroom dance, like through most of high school. So it was just something that was pretty important to me. So I decided to chat about it for like a whole 500 words, or however much the Common App essay is.
I love that. It's really, and that's great. It's like there's an essay doesn't have to be, there's no one specific way that a college essay can be.
Totally.
But truly, that's something that you could write that no one else would be able to. So I feel like that's a great topic to choose from. There's a question about someone that asked, like, why is being the first in your family to go to college, why is that a good thing, or why is that a good character quality in your application? Well, some schools do have specific goals of recruiting a certain percentage of their incoming class that are geared towards first generation, like you would be the first in your family to go to college. But also, I think it's important to note that in your application, so that way, if you are admitted to a university or a college or a university, if there's resources to help get you connected, if you want to get connected to the communities or the different support groups that are there, it can be helpful for them to know ahead of time of like, hey, this might be a person that would be interested in some of these programs that are available. So it's always also, I think it just impacts how you're talking about the college experience, right? So whereas other people may be able to say like, oh, I've dreamed about going to Northwestern since my grandpa went there and my father went there, my mother went there. If you haven't, then it just changes your outlook towards college and kind of like what that could look like. So let's see. Patrick, do you have, thinking about like the transition to college, do you remember anything from your first year that stood out as like a really big tradition at Northwestern that kind of cemented what Northwestern feels like?
Yeah, so I think from like the first week that I was on campus, I heard about Dillo Day, and everybody was already going crazy for it. So basically, Dillo Day, if anybody hasn't heard of it, it's a student-produced music festival that we have here in Northwestern that happens like at the beginning of June, end of May, basically to just kind of celebrate toward like the end of the year before we have to take our last finals, and everyone's just kind of like releasing any type of just, I guess, tension from the year, or was it just exhaustion sometimes? But yeah, I kind of heard about it for my first week, and then actually on my second year here, I was able to go and be a part of Mayfest, which is this group that puts it together. But that's kind of just, I think that's something that pretty much just shows like what Northwestern is as a school, in a sense that, only we would kind of put on the biggest student-produced music festival in the country, but also have a good time while doing it. It's you have so many opportunities here, like similar to that, even with WAMU, which is the largest student-written musical in the country for anybody who's interested in theater, or the Dolphin Show, which is student-produced, and even like I was mentioning before with film, where students are really producing films. I mean, not unfortunately not like at the time, but last year, like every weekend there was a film shoot going on around campus, or there was some sort of theater production somewhere. It's as much as this is also an academically regular school, at the same time, people here really take advantage of leadership opportunities and just trying to find out what they want to do post-grad at the same time. And that's just like they're doing so many extracurriculars and just finding what they're passionate about, as I mentioned before. So that's definitely, kind of went on a little bit of a tangent, but that's definitely the first tradition I heard about Northwestern while I was here.
That's great. And I think, talking about how there's films being recorded every weekend, or there's more theater productions than there are weekends in a given year. Also, if you're interested in like music, there's all these films and theater productions that also need musical accompaniment. So even if you're not going to be a music major, there's so many ways that what you're doing now in high school, or if you're a ballroom dancer, there's lots of other ways for you to get connected to campus. But just because you're not specifically studying something academically, especially at Northwestern, doesn't mean that that's going to be something that you can't do while you're there.
For sure.
Patrick, we have a question about if you can tell a little bit more about your short answer questions, if you remember any of your short answers that you wrote in your application, and if you have any tips on how you started to write and how you decided that ballroom dancing was going to be the topic that you were focusing on.
Oh my God, this is a real blast in the past. It was 44 years since I've written mine. I think I can chat a little bit more about the Why Northwestern statement, because at the same time, I think I just love the question, because it really does. It does showcase like what you want to get from the school even before you get there. And I think, I think one tip that I have about that statement is just, it's as much you're trying to find out whether this is the right school for you, as much as we're trying to find out whether, that it's in both ways. And I think using that Why Northwestern statement, just kind of dig a little deeper into NU itself. And there's so many websites and links that you can visit in terms of just like what Northwestern has to offer, and just like find out, for me, I at the time was super interested in becoming a cardiovascular surgeon who was going to be making artificial hearts. And I was like, okay, well, let's try to figure out whether Northwestern has any programs that are, that would actually allow for me to continue on with that, say, post-grad and med school, things like that. So I just like used, what am I majoring in, but also at the same time, what am I passionate about? What do I want to do later on, to just research into Northwestern and see, does it offer programs that would allow for me to pursue this actually? So that's kind of my tip to you, is just try to dig a little bit deeper into it and include some things about Northwestern in there that you like found really interesting, or things that you would actually want to utilize while you're on campus. But in terms of that Common App essay, I think my tip is just, again, like just focus on what you're passionate about, because I think even through writing, I have to say my writing skills are bad, but it's like, you're still able to showcase, like if you are passionate about something, it comes through the writing, and you're able to see that, that student's driven for something, and or wanting to like achieve some sort of goal with it. So that's kind of just the one tip I have for writing both of those prompts.
And a tip that I give for writing, if you have a couple different prompts to choose from, is if all the prompts that you have, if you choose like to just write a few thoughts about each one of them, it'll be helpful to just kind of get your thoughts started. But probably one of those prompts is going to stick out more than some of the other ones. And that's the one that I would say, go through all of them, see what you can write. And then if there's one that really sticks with, try building that one up a little bit more. Always have someone read your essays other than yourself. There's many common mistakes that people make, whether that's talking about the wrong school, maybe misspelling something, or maybe you left something in your essay that you were really, really hoping wasn't going to be in the final draft, and then it gets submitted. So always make sure that you have someone else read that as well.
For my Northwestern statement, I think I worked on that essay 7 hours on my own, and then I had people editing it left and right. Everybody in my high school was like, "Can you please fix this?" Because my grammar was so bad at the time. So put in the work. Yeah, you got to put in some effort, definitely.
There's, I'll give an example of a notorious essay in the Northwestern admissions office. Is one that I read I called it the essay, because the student was applying the university and they hadn't written out their essay yet, and it was just about time for the application to be submitted. And in their essay, they said that their computer shut down and they only had 2 more minutes to submit the application. So in order to hit the minimum amount, they just copied and pasted the word "the" about 150 times after telling me that their computer had died. So
that's genius, though. That's a really good. I wish I came up with that if I was, on the deadline.
Right, I probably would have just closed the window and been like, it's just not meant to be. But so it is a way to fill out your common application. But that being said, it's not always something that I would love to remember your college essay for something other than being the essay. So as you're thinking about it, make sure you give yourself enough time. And same thing with recommendation letters. I know that not being on campus, or if you are on campus, that everything looks a little bit different. When you're talking to recommenders, I say this partially because my wife is a Chicago public school teacher, but you want to be able to give them enough time on top of teaching and everything else. You want to give them enough time to be able to write that recommendation letter. It's fine to be able to reach out to them and to remind them about it, but keep in mind there's a lot that they have going on. There might be something where if it doesn't get in by the application deadline, many colleges and universities will actually allow you to submit recommendation letters afterwards. So most times the deadline is for your specific application, and then the other things can come in later. So that's just something to keep in mind. The question was about if they got accepted to Northwestern. No.
I was actually curious too. That would have been an amazing story if they did.
There were some other things too, but I will always remember the essays. So it's great. Patrick, we had a question about the kind of the culture and the atmosphere at Northwestern, especially since it's a pretty academic place. Can you talk about the competitiveness, if it is a competitive place? I think especially being able to speak from 2 different academic disciplines, coming from starting off as BME and then going into radio, television, film, those are such different academic areas.
Yeah, to be honest, I, in my time, have never experienced any type of competitive atmosphere. I think it's, at any university, I think any track that you're going to be on, whether that's say a law school track or a pre-med track, you're obviously going to have, a bit of a battle for grades. But even in the 3 months that I was in it, everybody in my program was so helpful. And just like, I would be like, "Hey guys, I really don't know what to do for this chem report. Can somebody help me and just sit down with me for a few hours and like just teach me what all of chem is?" And they were willing to do it. It was crazy stuff like that. And especially, that was kind of my side with BME. But now coming into RTBF, as I was mentioning before, just being on sets every weekend, you meet it. Everybody here is a community. Like, it's just one big sort of helpful community that you can reach out to so many people across campus to just find help, whether it's on a paper or just on your film. I know so many, I've only worked as a producer on films, but just at the last minute being like, hey, we need a grip for this set. Can anybody help? And just like reaching out to everyone we know. And of course, like 5 people responded. We're like, yeah, no problem. It's like, I, in my time, have not experienced any type of competitiveness. And, but with every university, I think that, obviously it's more of just a battle with yourself in terms of like making sure that you're pushing yourself to get the best grades you can and, do the extracurriculars that you want to do, but no real kind of competition between me and my peers whatsoever, I got to say.
I love hearing that. There's also a tradition, for those of you that are not familiar with Northwestern, that I think kind of speaks to the collaborative and not super cutthroat competitiveness. It's Primal Scream. So Primal Scream happens. Do you want to explain Primal Scream?
Sure. Yeah, because in my time, I've actually never participated because I've only been an observer because I'm too embarrassed to sometimes go into it. But basically, Primal Scream is just at the end of every quarter before finals. I think it's like that Sunday. So many people are crammed into the library, and we have like periodicals, which is just the silent part of the library. And I think it's like at 9 p.m. on that Sunday, and everyone just like anybody who wants to gets up and just belts at the top of their lungs. And the amount of times that me and my friends have just been sitting there studying and just like jumped from like fear has been insane. But it's obviously not only the library, but it's like people congregate all around campus, like the sorority quad, frat quads are always like so loud because everybody comes in to get out together. But that's been a tradition that has made me laugh, but also scared the living daylights out of me so many times as well. So.
And I think that's a great tradition to talk about like student culture as being not super competitive, because if it was a place where everyone was just like, you are interrupting my studying and I hate this tradition, it wouldn't be carried on in a way that people know about it, people enjoy it, whether or not they even participate in it. It's kind of one of those things that's in the atmosphere at Northwestern. So I think that speaks a lot to the culture and the experiences that are there. There was a question about 100% need for financial aid. That's a great question. So how we do financial aid at Northwestern is that we ask you to fill out both the CSS profile and the FAFSA together. So let's say that the total cost of Northwestern is $10,000. It is certainly much more than $10,000, but the math will be so much easier if we say that it's $10,000. So if you fill out the FAFSA form and the CSS profile, and it says that you and your family are expected to pay $500 towards your education, the 100% need met when we're talking about financial aid packages, that would be everything from the total cost minus that $500 that you put. That $9,500 gap would be your financial aid package. So as we said in one of the slides, all of our financial aid packages at Northwestern are loan free. I know that that's something that has drawn students to Northwestern quite a bit, just to be able to use for Northwestern to be able to use our resources in a way that helps students to attend, that we're excited about attending, without necessarily having to take on that extra burden of student loans is really, really important. So like I said, obviously $10,000 is not the actual cost, but not a math major. So that makes it a little bit, a little bit easier to go through that. So we have a few more questions. We have a question about the film sets you are working on, and how did you actually get involved in film at Northwestern?
Totally. So actually, funny enough, the way I only kind of started falling in love with film my winter break of freshman year, because I watched like hundreds of movies during the 3 weeks because I was like, I have nothing better to do. I don't know what I want to major in. What do I do? So within 3 months, I kind of like I got into the summer, and funny enough, somebody was doing a video game that they wanted like live action components filmed for. And he was a first-time director, and he was like, I'm really just kind of looking for a producer, no prior experience needed. And I was like, why not? Let's try it out. So I kind of spent that summer and then the next couple of months up until November producing the whole thing. And that's kind of how I got into it. And then I got into a little bit more producing gigs, in a sense, like I just met some friends and they were like, hey, I'm submitting this to, so the way that you really get to make a film is you submit your script to a bunch of film boards that we have on campus, like Studio 22 and Multicultural Filmmakers Collective, and just say, this is the reason why I think I deserve the money for the film. And then if you win it, you get grant for it, that you get to then produce it. And the director typically has somebody that they know, or they do petitions to get a producer. And from then on, if you want to work on a film set, say it's like a grip, working on lighting, or just, be the DP for the film, then you just typically we host petitions for it at like Norris, which is just like our student center. And we just kind of set like a chunk of time for like 2 days, and people just come in and pitch like, why they want to do this. And typically it's really open to any and all students on campus. You don't even have to be a film major, but you can be a first year, second, third, or you just want to try something new that you just never done before. You're more than welcome to just come petition and say, I really want to help on this film. I love the script and I would love to do it. And you're more than likely just going to be able to be on the set itself. And from then on, once you kind of learn like what film sets are and how they work, if you really love it, then you can start to climb the ranks a little bit and work as a producer or a director and things like that. So that's kind of how my involvement started, which is a little bit crazy, but for other people, it's a little bit more of a streamlined process.
What is the role of a producer? Like, what is your actual role in the film set as a producer?
Sure. So basically, my role as a producer is just doing everything from the back end of a film leading up to the set, actually. So it's scouting for locations, it's finding actors for just being there for casting, or just finding, crew members for just through petitions. Also following along with the director to make sure the script's getting developed as much as possible. And then kind of day of set, making sure that film equipment is there, actors are there. If somebody needs a coffee, I'm running and I'm getting it. So it's kind of just kind of stuff like that. But it's been probably the most worthwhile experience I've had here at NU, and it's made me fall in love with film, which is what I want to, do after college. And so it's kind of made me fall in love with entertainment in general. And I think without those experiences, I really wouldn't have known whether I want to do that. But, as a producer, yeah, you're doing it's pretty hectic, but it's also for somebody like me who like lives for drama. It's definitely great. I loved it so far.
You found your place, and that's great.
Really,
it's a great tie into what I was going to ask. Because obviously, the future is unknown. But if you were to craft your own path, like from Northwestern, you graduate and you're able to just launch yourself into something, whether it's an organization or a career or maybe like a location you want to be at. Do you know, like, what's the dream that you would like to see after Northwestern?
So I got pretty lucky, even in the midst of all this COVID. I got a return offer for a job. So I'm going to be working at Hulu next year, starting off in the fall, but working more on like their advertising team. But from there, hoping to kind of go a little bit more into content work. So whether it's like content strategy and doing research for them, just for their new shows. And then from there, hopefully getting into working more on content development, writing my own scripts. And then even though I'm such a bad writer, I do love to critique other people's work a lot. So that's kind of like the dream job, is like working as like a creative exec and just being like, you know what, I love this show. Let's do it. Let's produce it. That's what I want to do. But yeah, that's kind of the dream job in say like a decade or a couple of years. But as of right now, I'm moving to New York City, which is pretty crazy because I've lived here my whole life. So New York seems like the dream right now. But who knows what's going to happen. Maybe one day it's going to be like Canada. We'll figure it out. So like,
awesome. I think that's great. And obviously, yeah, great to hear that even in the midst of everything else being unknown, that there's still some really great opportunities for people to be able to do that. So
definitely.
Let's see what other questions. I think we have just time for maybe one more question. There was a question about how study abroad trips are made more accessible to low-income and first-generation students. At Northwestern, you can choose where you want to go, which program you want to go for, as well as how long you want to be able to study abroad, since we're on the quarter system, and a lot of other schools are on the semester-based system. It does give you the chance to be able to do that, to be able to kind of choose how long you want to go. But I think what's important is that, like we mentioned before, your financial aid that you'd be receiving on campus would allow you to also be able to go wherever one of those programs you're interested in studying, you'd still be receiving the same financial aid. So that allows, people from lower income backgrounds to be able to go to that, but also people who have really complex academic programs. If there's a lot of credits that you need in order to graduate, we still have, like for our engineers, we have a higher rate of engineers who are able to study abroad just because of some of that flexibility. So yeah. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening to our stories about traditions and ballroom dancing and food all throughout Chicago.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Any parting words? You have another minute or so to get anything out there? Any advice for the future class or anything?
I know it's a very stressful time. I thought, college applications are really something crazy, but at the end of the day, I promise you're really going to end up where you're meant to be. It's just try your hardest in every application, but you'll be pleased hopefully with every school whatever school you end up at, for sure.
And I will say that my parting words will be those 2 quotes that are in the presentation. So if you want to use those and embrace those, go for it. It's really great to be able to be here with you all, and for you to be able to hear from Patrick and just to be able to share all this with you. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Paul and Patrick, thank you so much for spending your night with us and sharing all of that great information.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And you guys, before we move on to the next presentation, if you could do us a favor, Northwestern included a post survey at the button below that's titled Complete Survey. If you could do this, it takes like 2 minutes, and tell us your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. And then once you're done, don't go anywhere, because in 5 minutes, Colby College's presentation is coming up. So stay tuned to learn more about the holistic application review process. Okay. So you guys were polite in the comments for saying thank you. They were awesome. Through a lot of questions. If anybody has any questions about the new CapEx insights through College Greenlight or anything like that, feel free to drop them in the comment section while we get ready to go into Colby's presentation. Also, you do have a couple of minutes still to complete the survey, so if you can, complete feedback survey. That button's right at the bottom, really easy to get to. If you guys had a favorite moment, make sure you tweet that at #OnlineCollegeBlockParty. If you want to tag us, we're at @CGreenlight. I know Northwestern would love to hear what you loved about their presentation. Now is also the time to take a break, grab a snack, whatever time it is by you. I'm sure you're probably getting hungry. So some water, a little snack on the side, and you'll be geared up for the rest of the night. All right, guys, we'll see you over in the Colby presentation.